clerk. Tillman the whore and his handler Rooke the whore both became clerks to aid and abet Redmond and to enforce his Roman civil statutes. Judges who become involved in enforcements of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks of the involved agency. All of this is under instructions from Elizabeth the bitch. No disrespect to dogs intended, because if a dog is your enemy, he doesn't make you think he's your friend while he sticks a knife in your back. And this is Elizabeth the bitch, and she's the ringleader of the criminal enterprise called Canada. And look at that, she's even got a snarl on her face, which is perfectly appropriate for that bitch. Anyways, this a judge ceases to act as a judicial officer because the governing principles of administrative law provides that courts are prohibited from substituting their evidence, testimony, record, arguments, and rationale for that of the agency. Additionally, courts are prohibited from their substituting their judgments for that of the agency. And so again, it's a kangaroo court. The guy's a clerk. It's not a court. It's an accepted rule that not only in state courts but of federal courts as well, when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a ministerial clerk for an agency. It's a kangaroo court. And it's completely admiralty. They don't have a shred of authority, and they're fully liable. We're going to go into that. Oh, here it is. Judge loses his absolute immunity from damage actions only when he acts in clear absence of all jurisdiction or performance of an act which is not judicial in nature. When enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially and thus are not protected by qualified or limited immunity. And so they don't have a shred of immunity. And so Rooke and Redmond, Judgment Day's coming. Judgment Day's coming, boys. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right, for they are deemed to know the law. An officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. So Rooke is not a government official. He's breached the trust. He doesn't represent the government anymore. Redmond is not a government official. He's breached the trust. He doesn't represent the government anymore. And there's a bunch of people that are not, like in my Canada Border Pigs video, okay, they weren't representing the government either, and so they're not representing the government, and so therefore they're just a bunch of thieves. They're all just a bunch of thieves. They're thieves and pirates. That's exactly what they are. Rooke is an imposter putting on a charade in his kangaroo court to complete his quasi-contract. An imposter is those who falsely pretend an extraordinary commission from heaven or terrify and abuse people with false denunciations of judgments. Well, think about it. Think about it. First of all, he's a clerk, right? So he's an imposter. He's an impersonating a judge, and he's issuing these false denunciations of judgments. He has no authority. Like the warrant that the RCMP pigs picked me up on wasn't a valid warrant because the judge wasn't a judge. He was a clerk. And so again, this is all about imposters and fraud. And big-time fraud. Imposter, one who pretends to be someone else to deceive others, especially to receive the benefits of a negotiable instrument. Think about it. How do they get paid? They get paid, these whores get paid by Bank of Canada notes, which are commercial instruments, or Federal Reserve notes, which are commercial negotiable instruments, or a check, negotiable instruments. I mean, I don't care what you want to call it. I guarantee you they don't get paid in gold or silver coin. Neither Redmond nor the CBSA pigs had any jurisdiction. Where there's no jurisdiction, there's no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Should have, as such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya. And that's found at Coke is cited in a U.S. Supreme Court case, which is cited in a U.S. District Court case. And so they're all just, they don't have a shred of authority. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. Canada Border Services Agency pigs made a void judgment. Redmond the pig made a void judgment. A void judgment is one which has no legal force or effect whatever. It's an absolute nullity. Its invalidity may be asserted by any person whose rights are affected at any time, at any place. It need not be attacked directly, but may be attacked collaterally whenever and wherever it's interposed. And so Rooke and Redmond, Judgment Day's coming. Void order may be attacked either directly or collaterally at any time. A void judgment is one which from its inception is and forever continues to be absolutely null and without legal efficacy, ineffectual to bind the parties or to support a right, of no legal force or effect whatever, incapable of enforcement in any matter to any degree. And you know, when I was in their jail, I went and I have proof of this. I went and put it in my video. I sent the director of the jail one of their interview requests, asking him if he wanted to be an accomplice to false imprisonment, assault, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. Obviously, he does want to be an accomplice to all of that. So I guess you know, he's next. A void order results from a fundamental defect in proceedings or from a without jurisdiction or ultra vires act of a judicial public body or judicial holder, judicial office holder. Well, I would say a clerk masquerading as a judge is a fundamental defect in proceedings, and I would say fraud on the court is a fundamental defect in proceedings. Without jurisdiction, ultra vires act is any act which the court did not have power to do. A void order is incurably void in all proceedings. These are actually, these last two slides, this one and this one, are English cases. Anyways, a void order is incurably void in all proceedings based on the invalid claim or void act are also void. Even the decision of the higher courts will be void if the decision is founded on an invalid claim or void act, because something cannot be founded on nothing. Not every action by any judge is an exercise of his judicial function. It is not a judicial function for a judge to commit an intentional tort, even though the tort occurs in the courthouse. When a judge acts as a trespasser of the law, when a judge does not follow the law, the judge loses subject matter jurisdiction and the judge's orders are void and no legal force or effect. Okay, well, gee, that sounds like a clerk. When a clerk is biased and he's bought and paid for, that's fraud on the court. And when he's a clerk and masquerading as a judge, then their orders are void and of no legal force or effect. So the RCMP pigs, first of all, the U.S. consulate pigs, and we're going to go into that, they turned me in. And so, anyways, whenever any officer of the court commits fraud during a proceeding of the court, he or she is engaged in fraud upon the court. Fraud upon the court is fraud which is directed to the judicial machinery itself, and is not fraud between parties or fraudulent documents, false statements, or perjury. That's not fraud on the court. It is where the court or member is corrupted or influence is attempted, or where the judge has not performed his judicial function. Thus, where the impartial function of the court have been directly corrupted. And that's fraud on the court. And fraud on the court has been identified by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals to embrace that species of fraud which does or attempts to defile the court itself, or is a fraud perpetrated by officers of the court, so that the judicial machinery cannot perform in the usual manner its impartial task of adjudging cases that are presented for adjudication. And so, again, gee, that sounds like a clerk. A decision pronounced by fraud upon the court is not in essence a decision at all and never becomes final. That's basically, they're talking about void judgments, right? A void judgment can be attacked at any time and any place. A fraud upon the court vitiates the entire proceeding. It nullifies it. A maxim that fraud vitiates every transaction into which it enters applies to judgments as well as to contracts and other transactions. The maxim that fraud vitiates every transaction into which it enters. And so, again, it's fraud. Brutum fulmen, an empty noise, an empty threat, a judgment void upon its face, which is in no legal effect, no judgment of all, and by which no rights are divested, and from which none can be obtained, neither binds nor bars anyone. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. And so Redmond and Rooke are issuing brutum fulmen, and they're doing nothing but causing injury to all sorts of people, and they're nothing but a bunch of thieves and liars, and who knows, they could be murderers. Based on a void judgment, the RCMP pigs arrested me, which is false arrest, and because Redmond the pig was not a judge, therefore the warrant was not a lawful warrant. And when they falsely imprisoned me in their Calgary Remand Center and their Lethbridge Correctional Center for 82 days, but there's no way I'll ever see justice at the hands of these Vatican Jesuit whores like Redmond the pig and Rooke the pig and Whitman the pig and Tillman the pig, which is what these pigs intended, and Elizabeth the bitch, no disrespect to dogs intended. The U.S. U.S. Embassy pigs at Calgary called up the RCMP pigs and told them I was there when they decided to take a nice long lunch break to give the RCMP pigs time to get there so they could facilitate their unlawful arrest and their false imprisonment. The RCMP pigs were waiting for me when I came out of the elevator, and they arrested me based on the warrant issued by one of their clerks masquerading as a judge in conspiracy with the Canada Border pigs. And so, yeah, that's what happened. And the Calgary police even told me that that the U.S. Embassy turned me in. Yeah, so anyways, that's all more grist for the mill. We'll just, it's all going to get exposed. It's all being exposed. That's part of this. And circulate this far and wide. These judicial whores intend that their brain-dead, idiot, low-intelligence hired thugs assault us, kidnap us, and false imprison us because it is so good for business. Rooke the pig, Whitman the pig, Fraser the pig are busy making business for their clerk buddies masquerading as judges in their so-called courts so they can all collect a royalty. If anyone has any doubt about that, check out Jordan versus City of New London, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, case number 99-9188. And Jordan was a guy that had a master's degree, and he tried to get a job with the City of New London Police Department, and they refused to hire him. And it was because he scored too high in the test. And the whore in the Court of Appeals, the clerk, went and said that, well, it's not a good idea, but they have that right. So obviously these whores intend that this happen because it makes so much business for them. I mean, think about it. This brought that case. How many thousands of dollars? All these courts are banks, and they leverage the filing fees. So if you go and, like when they had that, when Lehman Brothers went down, they went and had the CEO of Lehman Brothers in Congress on TV, and the congressman sits there and says, well, we see you leverage these assets by 30 times. Well, so they're talking about that the bankster thieves are only required to keep a 3% reserve requirement, and so they leverage it by that's why they leverage it by 30 times. So then $10 turns into $300, and that's what they loan out. And so what they do is these courts do the same thing. So you file a $400 filing fee, it turns out to $12,000 on the balance sheet of the court. It's all about the money, and they're getting royalties. Most of these judicial whores, or so-called judicial whores, are retiring millionaires because of the royalties they're collecting. The only way we'll ever get any real justice is to demand common law jury of our peers, and we need to know what that is. This is the Fire the Whores campaign. And so a true common law jury does not take instructions from some whore. The true common law jury calls the witnesses, questions the witnesses, determines the law and the facts of the matter, and they can ignore any statute or law. It's called jury nullification. And look it up. A true common law jury will pronounce sentence, if any, and the decision's not subject to appeal. And it has to be a jury of your peers. And do you want to place your future in the hands of a United Nations whore who wants to sit on the bench and play stupid? Do you want to put the future of your wife and children in the hands of one of these judicial whores that have complete immunity no matter what? Because if you sue one of them, you have to get one of their whore buddies to do it. Sure, some of them want to do real justice, but are you going to take a chance that you got a good one? And the absolute best that you can hope for is the appearance of justice, which is a fraud. And that is the absolute best. They're not competent to do anything else. Their own cases say so. Do you want to place your future in the hands of a whore that's bought and paid for by these crown pigs? Do you want to place yourself in the hands of a judicial whore who's intent on converting you into a ward of the court, which is an imbecile? Do you consider yourself Christian? Do you try to follow the golden rule? Do you treat others the way you want to be treated? Do you think you'll get any sympathy from God on Judgment Day when you have not done everything you can to put a stop to these satanic judicial whores selling their justice? There's a thing called karma, and that's the principle of what goes around comes around. And it's a universal principle, and I think everybody pretty well recognizes that that happens. And if we knowingly allow these judicial whores to victimize tens of thousands of people in the name of their satanic religious ceremonies, don't you think that we'll be held accountable? Don't you think it'll come back around at us? Don't you think it's already coming back around at us every day when they sell us their justice in their de facto so-called courts, when the revenue officers masquerading as police officers unlawfully arrest us for commercial crimes like speeding, when they deny us due process based on one of their fictitious quasi-contracts, when they populate their prisons with their victimless crimes? All judges are foreign agents of the Vatican. See the presentation on bar members. This idea of separation of church and state was really taking Christianity out of the government and displacing it with the satanic Roman civil law from the Vatican. All so-called court cases are actually a satanic religious ceremony by priests of Baal. And Rooke had his Baal priest uniform on in that picture that I showed. Under the guise of the separation of church and state, they've taken the Lord's Prayer out of the schools. They've taken Christian symbols out of the schools. They've taken Christian symbols out of the courts. They've converted our Christian government into satanic government, and it's all been done by court rulings from these priests of Baal that are actually clerks, and they're masquerading as judges. Common law, there's no prisons. That's why common law is so severe. All prisons are commercial. Most of the people in prison are there for victimless crimes. We need to fire these whores and end the tyranny of these de facto United Nations courts and their Vatican judicial whores selling their justice. Our court is only a jury of our peers, and we're all being denied it so these judicial whores can populate their prisons and collect their royalties. We all need to work together to bring these whores to justice. I'd like to see some of these whores do that little dance they do at the end of a common law rope. I'm glad that it's up to a jury of my peers and not me. We can never take the law into our own hands because that makes us worse than them. My conscience is clear. I've never breached the peace. There was no crime committed. I'm completely innocent, and they do not want a common law jury to hear it, which is why they held their de facto kangaroo court, issued their void judgment, and are so adamant about denying me due process. Tillman, under the directions of his handler Rooke, says that the Magna Carta is out of date and doesn't apply anymore. Tyrants have been saying that the Magna Carta is out of date for centuries. A good example is the War of Independence, the Glorious Revolution, and probably about every 100 years since the Magna Carta was signed. And by the way, there's a court case that says that the tyrant King John signed the Magna Carta basically they went and stuck a sword to his throat and said, "Here, King, we want you to sign this." And obviously they want to bring about another revolution. It is my opinion that well over 90%, probably 99% or more of the people who work as peace officers are honest, hard-working people who are very patriotic and take their oaths of office very seriously. Many of them have not been properly trained. Many of them are under pressure to generate revenue. The burden's on us to educate them since their bosses are obviously not doing it. What can we do? We can lay a proper foundation so they cannot claim ignorance. Their only strength is in plausible deniability. And that's because Rooke and these whores are giving it to them. That we can demand a common law court. We can know what a true common law court is, so you can tell if they really give you a common law court or it's just another version of a show trial. We can complain to the Council of Whores. The Judicial Council will make sure you bring up the right issues. Complain to politicians. We need to work together to fire these Vatican judicial whores selling their justice. Now, another thing you can do is circulate this video. Circulate it far and wide. I'm circulating it as much as I can, and any help is appreciated. What can we do? Make YouTube videos and circulate them. Send the YouTube's video to me and I'll circulate them. Realize it is never over until you say it's over. It never, ever, ever give up. Always remember, we the people are the ones who are really in control, not a gang of Vatican judicial whores selling their justice, not their hired thugs, not the Canada border pigs. Even a peace officer can do nothing that we ourselves cannot do. I mean, when they're operating as a peace officer, then we have a duty to come to their aid, but we have a duty to know when they're operating as a peace officer, because if they're operating in their private capacity, then we have no duty whatsoever to come to their aid. And so that's what we need to understand, is when they're operating as a peace officer and when they're not. We can refuse to participate in their de facto system. We can educate ourselves about what a common law jury is and what the law of the land is. We can educate ourselves so we know when our rights are being violated. We can educate our public servants because many of them do not know any more than we do. We can educate other people by circulating this video, and any other way possible. We can demand a common law jury of our peers. We can work with our friends and neighbors to reestablish our common law juries and our common law de jure courts. We can work with our friends and neighbors to get the UN out of America and Canada and anywhere that wants to be free. The United Nations is owned and operated by the bankster thieves and their Vatican handlers. Judgment Day is coming for these Canada Border Services Agency pigs and their judicial whore pig handlers. Actually, they're clerks like Rooke. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing some of them do that little dance they do at the end of a common law rope. There are common law courts springing up all over, and these judicial whores are going to be brought to some real justice. I'm glad it's not up to me. This Kevin Annett and his International Common Law Tribunal is a good example of a common law court that's springing up. And the only thing I can say is go, Kevin, go. Go, Kevin, go. So upcoming events: Color of Law, Fire the United Nations Judicial Whores in Texas, City of Fort Worth Pigs, City of Grand Prairie Pigs, How to Do a Habeas Corpus, Citizenship, Fire the United Nations Judicial Whores in America. These are some of them. I got the Color of Law. So anyways, these are some of them. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group, Administrating Your Public Servants. I've got YouTube videos. My profile is Sovereign Living. Hopefully you see that. And if you want other copies, send me an email and I'll see what I can do. Anyways, it's been, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen in, and I hope you have a real nice day.